Revolution. Been a while since we've been live, and this was the first time I'm doing so in the hockey end, but I had to with the news that the Isles have acquired Bo Horvat, that they have gone for it, that they are attempting to improve the team, the powerless power play, to get somebody who can put the puck in the net and to breathe life into a team that, despite the last two wins, has seemed to be dead upon arrival since the beginning of January, the offseason prior, last year's terrible season, and has tried to maximize everything they can with the talent they've got, which is harder to do with stay in your lane versus Barry Trotz on its own. Welcome, as we never on our own. Welcome to those of you in Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcasts. If you're on the Diddy Live and an Islander fan, and some of you sitting there and you're like, why is this baseball guy slash sort of basketball guy talking about hockey? Let me give you the quick go around that most people who have followed me over the last couple of decades or know me personally already know. My favorite team in sports has been, I got to move this way. It's the team over my shoulder here. My favorite team in sports since I'm about 5 years old has been the Islanders. My favorite sport to watch since I'm that age has been hockey. I was saying this the other day on my podcast, dealing with superstitions in sports, that I've had a conundrum because even with travel and everything that I've, changes in life, depending upon where I've lived, it really doesn't matter. Outside of, I can't because I have got an obligation as a father, or I'm currently working on the air at another sport, and sometimes even then, I'd have the game on in the background. Outside of those situations, there wasn't a situation I don't watch an Islander game. Haven't really missed a game that I could have watched and feasibly chose not to, or at least hadn't, in about a decade until less than a week ago. I guess it's about 5 days ago, where I got so absolutely ticked off after watching loss after loss, riding Sorokin like Seattle slew, not able to score, watching this anemic power play, and I said to myself, that's it, I need a break. For my own sanity, I need a damn break. Even last year, during that terrible year, during the road trip, during the end of the season when it didn't matter, I watched every damn game. During the years of the Nicholas Andersons and the Brad Lauers, and you could give me any guy and whether the fish sticks, where we were sitting there hoping Zygmunt Palffy was a hero, when we were hoping John Spano had more than $7 in his bank account. I've been there. But I sat there and I took a break and I said to myself, for karma, I can't deal with this garbage any longer. I need a break. So I took a break. And then they won 2 games. And as I said on my podcast the other day, talking about superstitions, I admit to you, I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe, just maybe, I'm not going to watch it again till they lose. Because whatever I did, and clearly it's all tongue-in-cheek, because what the hell does it matter what I do? But whatever I was doing, whatever I had thought of was working, because my karma had somehow channeled into this hockey team that I'm obsessed with since I'm a kid, which is 3 inches shorter than I am now. But regardless, all right, for almost 40 years, I'm 44. And I'm channeling my karma in a way that, whatever reason, when I said I'm done, they went in, they won 2 games. Well, now I'm telling you, I'm sure I'm not watching again till they lose. I may never watch again, just for their benefit. Now, that's not true. After the news that just came out of the acquisition of Bo Horvat, we, as always, appreciate you being on with us. As part of that deal is, of course, that we are presented, as always, by our good friends at BetOnline. BetOnline remains your number one source for your sports betting needs this season. Everything from NFL playoffs to pro and college basketball, UFC, MMA, and more. You always get the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, game trends at BetOnline. Live betting options, free contests, and live scores for almost any sport, anytime, any game imaginable. BetOnline, truly the fastest, easiest way to bet all your favorite leagues and events. Head over to the website today. Use your mobile device and join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Be sure to use the promo code BELIEVE, it's BLEAV, to receive your rewards. BetOnline.ag, where the game starts. Lot to unpack here. If you want to jump in on the chat, you can live. You want to reply on Twitter, I'll try and get you live, get you after, bring in your questions, get on the YouTube comments, whatever the case is. And again, he used to me from the baseball side or talking basketball, and you hate hockey or you don't understand it or the puck's not big enough or what is an offside. I appreciate all of you equally. Go ahead and scroll throughout Twitter, watch something else on YouTube, switch to the next episode on the Apple podcast, and go to episode 150 when it comes out next couple of days, and I'm totally cool. We're good. but I got to let this go because if you've ever in any sport rooted for a team that seemingly has fallen asleep and done nothing, does nothing for the guys in the locker room, or if it's a clubhouse on the baseball side, does nothing for the fans to make them feel like they're trying to get better. And it's frustrating because, especially when Barry Trotz was there, guys like Brock Nelson, among many others, got better and better and better, but they were maximizing the talent that you had available to you. The personnel could only be so good. There are a lot of franchises I think of in sports that probably feel this way. One that just came to mind randomly for me, the Minnesota Twins. And I know the Correa thing, okay, but how many times we've sat there and it's like, wow, imagine they did this, then they could go ahead and win a division. And then they never do the move that some other team makes. Or the Pirates when they had Andrew McCutchen, and instead of going ahead and renting guys because they didn't want to go rent for a Lester, a Price, or a Hamels, and there are many others during that time period, could have pushed them over the edge. They were the team that was getting shut out and sent out by Bumgarner and Jake Arrieta in wild card games instead. All right? So there are all kinds of different scenarios like this. But for an Islander fan, this Bo Horvat deal, let's start with what it says and the message. The message is we're not going to take it. Hello, D. Snyder, Twisted Sisters, staying on Long Island. We're not going to take it. That's what we've been waiting for. First of all, we've been waiting for Lou to be awake. This whole idea that Lou's stealth, not stealth. Here's a guy who's, look, he's a Hall of Famer and the architect of all architects, but he ain't building very many buildings anymore. And if somebody tweeted, maybe Lou's still got it because he's been hiding in the background. There hasn't been much that's been going on outside of firing the best coach arguably in the NHL and bringing in Lane Lambert, who nobody was knocking down doors to go get. All right? Sorry. Right? To make it easy, a guy you can control like your puppet and go bring in John McClain to run the power play and every other former devil that ever lived. All right? It's not that easy. But what he been doing? He been sleeping? He hadn't been making any moves. Islander fans like me sitting there getting driven nuts. Well, hello. Bo Horvat's got 31 goals. Bo Horvat's an all-star. He's a captain, a leader. He's a guy who's going to add to the team in the room, but he's a guy who can freaking put the puck in the net. He's a guy you can put with Barzal every single night on every single power play and not have to sit there and have Barzy play with, look, my namesake, God bless him, Casey Cizikas, who's a really terrific fourth-line center, would be a really, really good third-line center, and is a terrific player, right? And I love with the loyalty to the franchise and all that, but that's what he is. He can't be on your first line. You want to win, Casey Cizikas ain't on your first line. That's simple. You can't keep moving guys in. And we'll get to Ratu. I liked him. I like Wahlstrom when he's healthy. I like the 74 other guys in between. And the 7,000 times we tried to love Bales, because it's hard. Look, I don't care. Some of you hate it. It's hard not to love him. Through all of it, really. I mean, this guy just takes all of our punches and keeps on coming. I love this dude, right? But you can't be on the first line. Now, I don't know if you should be in the fourth line. You can't be in the first line. It's not good enough. So it's like, who's going to be there with Barzy? Every single day, it's somebody new. Every single day, it's somebody else that Matt Barzal is being asked to make better. Now, should great centers make others better? In my opinion, being fair, if you're at the highest of high level, you should. Sidney Crosby, and I'm not saying Matt Barzal, Sidney Crosby, but when we think about the highest of high level, the elite of the elite, how many guys been on his line on the wing that you're like, really? This guy? And you can go back in the day to several other centers of all different ilks that were considered to be high-end or all-star centermen, all right? So it sometimes happens. Look, John Tavares, I know Islander fans don't want to hear his name mentioned, but John Tavares, right, is a guy who, P.A. Parento, Brad Boyes, Matt Molson, sorry, what'd he do with Buffalo after that? The best years of Okposo, Bailey, and I don't even know how many others. It didn't even matter who was playing on his line. He made him better. That's what centermen do. And at times, Matt Barzal has not done that enough. I know that fair or unfair. Now, I'm not saying that's been the story this year because it is not. But times in the past, you look, I mean, there were times last year you wonder. But it wasn't good enough. I mean, it's not, this is not, even Michael Jordan had Scottie Pippen, Kobe and Shaq had each other. Who Matt Barzal got? Well, he's got Brock Nelson, but they can't play on the same line because they're both centers. And then away you go with the 900 other things and bouncing Anders Lee all over the place. Part of the Anthony Beauvillier problem, and I love Bo, and to me, hashtag Bo for Bo has to be the deal here, even though it's more than about Beauvillier. Anthony Beauvillier was a guy who was never, and I said this the other day, he was never going to be back to those moments where, forget his rookie year, the moments in the bubble with the Nelson and Brock Nelson and Josh Bailey line where he's making those plays up against the boards. And then, I know he had the game 6 goal the following year to get you to game 7, but there were some postseason moments. But Anthony Beauvillier was always seemingly a guy who made you angry because you knew there was more in there. On a line rush, he'd look like the fastest guy. On a given night or in a given period, he'd look like the hardest worker. And he'd always seem to find a way open. But then when you put him on the first line with Barzal, he seemingly couldn't be effective. And even when he sat on a line next to Nelson, where he seemed most comfortable, he was kind of here, there, all over the place. He wouldn't score in 11 games, and he'd have a couple of big goals. And again, you get sucked back in. And at the $4.5 million, I know they didn't make the move before the season began, but I said this the other day, they probably in hindsight should have. And this is them understanding in hindsight they should have. Because they very well may have just lost Beauvillier and Aatu Ratu and the pick, which is a conditional pick, all right, for a guy that is a rental. Now, this is where this comes in, because we know Horvat could score. We understand he's going to be better on the – look, he's going to improve this power play for sure, right? They don't have floor generals. It's not the basketball side, but he's that on the ice and can help out Barzal in that way. And I think going to be somebody who really – look, we haven't never talked about – somebody who helps Barzy outside of Anders Lee. Really, Jordan Eberle did a lot of that more than we gave it credit for when he was on that line. But here's a guy who can help out Barzal, which is not, he's been asked to drag dudes around, right? This is a guy who can now help out Barzal. I think this could be huge in Horvat. But this cannot be Ryan Smith. This cannot be a situation where, you're bringing in a guy and, he's sitting there on some rental. This isn't Thomas Vanek, and, there are many others that you could think of where this team's been in that spot. They got to get this guy signed. Now, to the credit, and I'm not comparing him with J.G. Pajot. Remember the Pajot deal, and then that deal got done rather quickly. Lou has look, even, I'm not, again, please, not comparing with Palmieri. Then was free at the end of that season, remember, in a UFA, I believe, and they got him locked up. We've seen this before where guys get traded in. Nick Leddy, Johnny Boychuk, going back to yesteryear. There have been a lot of guys who have come in and deals have gotten done with this franchise, right? So this is not the first time. They got to get Horvat done. Now, if the Islanders make the playoffs and have a shot and win a round, and Horvat is terrific, right? Is this a bust? It's not. It's still worth it. You know why? Because the message to the room is they care and they want to win. The message to the fans who deserve it, as much as any fan base in sports, is that you want to win and that you care, and you take a shot. And you don't know what's going to happen, right? And you try and sell him on Long Island. Look, how many players have we heard come over to the Islanders and they're like, I don't want to play there. We've heard this story tons of times. And then all of a sudden they love playing there. Hockey players love playing there. I mean, that's a real thing. I mentioned Boychuk. I've heard him talking about this in interviews before, among many others. They're like, the Island, all they know is the Marriott when they used to go there, right? And I know it's now UBS, but when it used to be the Collie, right? That's all they knew across the street. Go to Marriott and get the hell out. Go to Champions, have a beer, and leave, right? That was it. Some chicken wings, and you're out the door. And then you go to the Garden in the city where everyone wants to go. But they don't realize that living there, how nice it can be. And look, I'm from there, clearly, so I'm biased. But getting in and out of the city and what it could be for families and school districts and all those things that a lot of these guys care about, you got to sell Horvat on that. And maybe you do that over the couple of months and then try and lock up a deal in the offseason. But they were not in on Johnny Gaudreau, clearly, even though we thought they were. Got in on Kadri late. Maybe we thought those weren't the right matches, or maybe Lou was in but wasn't in enough. And, maybe it was what some of us thought, that the Islanders weren't aggressive enough, or that the Islanders had to overpay and couldn't, or that the Islanders had a cap space issue. A lot of those things had some real things in terms of balls in play, right? But they got to get Horvat done. But to me, that whole got to get is that's how this deal becomes an amazing deal. Look, I like Aatu Ratu. Do any of you think that this guy is some blue chip guy? I don't think so. I don't. I mean, he could be a good player. That's, to me, what you think. But I thought the same about Beauvillier, and Beau still can be a good player on a given night. And he could be, I think, a good second to third line. And he's kind of a borderline top 6 forward who, in flashes, is going to look like a guy who should be on the first line. That's what Beau is, right? Power play 2. I mean, that's kind of what he is, right? Didn't kill penalties, really. I mean, this is what he is. I think Ratu could be a nice player. I like what I saw of him, but this isn't somebody I'm going to, not risk. And Beau, for sure, absolutely. And if anything, you don't get Horvat, the money of both drops up the books and there's some space. But you had to make that move. You had to do it. and the pick is conditional. This move had to get made. It's a great deal, even if it's a rental for Horvat, because look, the Islanders won the last 2 games. They rode Sorokin and then rode Varley, who was brilliant, right? They can't really score yet, but they win the 2 games. They're 2-3 points out of a playoff spot. I think 2 behind Pittsburgh, 3 behind Washington, or maybe it's 3 and 4. A couple of games at hand I know Pittsburgh has. But they're right there. And now to bring in Horvat, it's the energy, it's the buzz. Think about, the Islanders All-Stars, in Sorokin and Nelson being there with Horvat, and I don't know who he plays for, by the way. When these trades happen, baseball handles it one way. I think hockey, I don't know how they're going to handle this. We've seen this before. I've seen it in baseball, where I've gone to an All-Star game to cover it, and the guy began on one team, and after the home run derby was on another. I've seen that before. And I'm trying to remember who that happened to. I think it was somebody with the A's was one of the teams. This happened a few years ago. Somebody have to remind me, but I do remember that. And somebody got traded. They were on a different team, and then they were on the other league. I don't know how what division he plays or how all that works really, and I don't really care, right? But at the end of the day, it's like now the buzz is going to start in the conversation. What do you think the text thread is like? People, these things matter. You don't think the 49ers defense, and by the way, so much love for I'm not a Niner fan, but for Brock Purdy and the balls of this dude, seriously. But you don't think the Niners defense was wearing it and feeling like Jacob deGrom not getting offense? Quinn Williams had to tweet about this is what life has been like for him, which was a shot at Zach Wilson. You don't think they're feeling some of that? Obviously, we know the circumstances with Purdy and then Johnson with the concussion. But how do you think they feel? You don't think the Islanders, forwards, or you don't think Matt Barzal is sitting there saying, okay, I like Simon Holmstrom, I like this guy, I like that guy. Really, these guys aren't good enough to play with me? Or imagine how much more I'd be freed up if they took attention and not everybody was sitting there seemingly 1-on-5 every time I get the puck, because they don't fear whoever I could pass it to, except when Wallstrom's in a slot maybe for a one-timer, right? We got to hope Ryan Pullock is that guy. I mean, think about what the Islanders have had to do on these power plays, right? Moving Barzal around. Imagine what these text threads are like. That's energy, people. That's what happens. That's what happens at trade deadlines. That's the mojo. That's all that energy and all that extra, that sauce that these guys start to feel because they know that their organization backing them to try and go do something special. So I love this deal, regardless of whether or not the Horvat signing happens. But if it happens, then it becomes no-brainer. Then it becomes an unbelievable trade. But the fact that the Islanders, and look, I'm not going to say it was because of me, even though literally I haven't watched 2 games I could have watched in like 10 years. They win them both, and now they make a trade. And the Islanders don't make trades like this. This is not what the Islanders do, all right? Now, I understand this feeling because as a Met fan, right, and there's a plaque of 86 back here, like, it seemed like it'd been about 86,000 years since I wasn't thinking of the Mets as a disaster. And then all of a sudden it's Lindor and Scherzer and this and that and Old Timers Day and all these great things that are happening, right? And it's like anything you ask for. Hey, can we get black jerseys? Boom, there they are. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't live in that life. Like, that Islander life isn't a life. The Islander life is 3 chicken fingers, about 7 French fries, and that'll be $9.50. And here's $25 to park. And I hope good luck in out on Hempstead Turnpike until at least the last couple of years. Good for the Islander fans. Good for the Islanders. Good credit to Lou Lamoriello. I've crushed the guy. I've killed the guy for being ancient and being an old timer. And this is a deal that he just pulled off, which is a fantastic trade for this team. It's a fantastic trade for this team. If Ratu hits and then the pick ends up being theirs, look, maybe for Vancouver, look, Bo is a guy who's enticing if I'm another team. Because they see the same thing. Look, think about it. The Canucks can come into town, and that could be the one game where this is an Islander fan, and this is what the difference is when you're watching a team every day versus watching a team kind of like every once in a while. As an Islander fan, you're watching this team. Like, Bo looks like that for like a game and a half, and then it's like a dud, right? It just doesn't happen anymore. But this is an unbelievable trade for the Islanders. I'm borderline stunned. I'm surprised. I'm impressed. Get Horvat done. Get him signed. Lock him up. Either way, happiest dude right now, Matt Barzal. Because this is going to be a power play that now is not all on him. It's going to be a top 6 that is not all on him. I mean, the other night they had a graphic before the game that, is showing the first line, I think it was. Maybe about a week ago, I think, after Palmieri came back. And they were talking about, look, Nelson's an all-star, right? Anders Lee on that line. And Palmieri, and that's the first line. Well, what line Barzal on? Like, he got to be that guy. Well, now he's got a dude who they got to stick with him every day, and that's it. Those two guys got to play together, and however you want the third guy to be doesn't matter. And finally, somebody who could help Barzal's talent be elevated by his play, not Barzal dragging everybody else around. Fantastic move for the Islanders. Credit to them. Kudos. And kudos to you for being on board the Unfiltered Revolution. I do a lot of baseball, but I like throwing in the basketball and certainly some Islander hockey. Get on board the YouTube train, subscribe in my bio, get all the videos, all the interviews, all the conversations from the likes of, Alex Cora, Gary Sheffield, Matt Holliday, Dusty Baker, and plenty others that I've had on here. David Aldridge, among others, on the basketball side. I've talked hockey with Brendan Burke, who's been on the show, Howie Rose as well, among others. So get in on that. But go Isles, and what a surprise seeing this on Twitter come across my timeline. Sitting there cleaning up from having dinner with the kids, and I saw the notification come up on my phone, and I saw Islanders and Horvat, and I'm like, I was going to say, what, they're calling on him? I'm shocked. So go Islanders, and congratulations to Lou Lamoriello. You definitely made me shut up, at least for today. I may not watch the Islanders again, so at least the rest of the franchise can watch them win and make great trades. And this should be fun coming out the other side of the All-Star break. As always, Unfiltered, whether live or not, whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or everywhere you get your podcast, watching on Twitter or on YouTube, is always brought to you by our good friends at BetOnline.